Hey all. Oops, can you hear me? Let me see. I want to make sure. Yeah, can you hear me? Let me know. Let me get in the comments. Aloha. How are you from Hawaii? You're up bright and early. Hope you had your coffee. Miss Frantic, you can hear me. Thank you so much. All right, perfect. JR, thank you for stopping in. James got the first question going on. Look at that. Oh, Love T609. Hello back to you. Thanks, guys, for coming bright and early. Faster we get the questions in, the faster we can get them out and get on our way, right? Okay. I'm just going to pop into, hi, Deb Lindley. How are you? Thank you so much, Deb. Good to know. Tisha, you go. Nice to see you. And by the way, our Hawaii first person of the day, screen name, what is it? Vidu Bayou? Vidu Bayou? Is that how you say it? All right, let's pop into it. James, nice and quick to the question. Thank you, James, for doing that. James says, 2 questions. My alleged onset date is the date I was born, and my date last insured is June 30th, 2028. Do the dates need to be corrected? I'm 38 years old. Well, that's a loaded question, James, because if you were disabled and unable to work SGA your whole life, this obviously would be, you're an adult, yeah, 38. You could allege an onset date of the day you were born. If you had SGA, that would interrupt a period of disability from birth, a legal period of disability from birth to now. And that's a term of art, the SGA, what work constitutes it and what doesn't. But if that was the case, then you would probably be picking the day after you stopped working SGA as your alleged onset date instead of the date you were born, because your medical records can show that you had these problems all along, and that's fine. And you could even say, I had this problem, then I was able to, for whatever reason, kick it in, make SGA, and now I can't again. So that can be fine in your historical picture of your medical. But in terms of a technical onset date, it wouldn't work, because if you are not steadily all the way through, that would be uninterrupted. And you were not disabled for some period of time, legally disabled under these rules. Date last insured, June 30th, 2028. That tells me that you worked enough to get your credits to become insured. That doesn't mean you are working SGA, though. You can get insured without doing substantial work. You can get it on very little part-time work that is not even substantially gainful activity part-time. You could also be doing part-time work that is SGA. So, there's 2 different ways that can go. Depends on how much you're working, how much you're earning, all that kind of stuff. So I can't tell you whether those dates need to be corrected because I don't know your case, but those are a couple things to think about. And your DLI, that's not something you yourself can change because you want to. It's not something you allege. It is something that evolves. If you do not continue to work and keep the credits going to keep, and we're talking to SSDI insured status. If you do not continue to work at least earning 2 credits a year, sometimes you have to work up to 4, you will eventually pass June 30th, 2028, and you will have not extended that out because you didn't pay in any more premiums through that work, which is what those credits kind of represent. So if you can work part-time, well under SGA, you can extend that June 30th, 2028 day out further, which can be helpful if you're filing for disability because you don't know if you're going to win it on your first hoorah run, right? So if you know that you always have insured status, you can reapply and reapply and reapply for the newer time period, whatever was found to be not disabled on the first application, you would be saying, okay, so right after that one, and that, by the way, that's if you've gone to an ALJ, and I wouldn't reapply on a denial on initial for that reason. There are instances when you do reapply, but that wouldn't generally be the case. Okay. James continues on. My father worked a full-time 40-hour job for 8 years straight before he passed away in November 2014. I'm sorry for your loss there, James. At the age of 69. I currently receive SSDI DAC. Okay, that's good. Does the recency test still apply? I do not believe so. Well, for SSDI on your own record, you will have a date less insured. But your DAC benefits presumably outweigh your SSDI benefits. Now, sometimes it's still worthwhile to hop over to SSDI on your own work record. For instance, if you want to get married, you won't have that hindrance. There are a lot of restricted marriages actually with DAC, because DAC means you're dependent on your father, whereas marriage means you're dependent on each other. You give up the parental apron, so to speak. And that's why people get confused. Why can't DAC people get married? Well, they can to other SSDI folks, because both are not claiming to be able to be, they're disabled and on their benefits. But in terms of marrying somebody else, that would be different, because you're no longer the dependent of the parent that you're collecting under the work record. You are becoming financially unlinked. And so now, because when we get married, that's the legal obligation we bear, is the financial responsibility for each other. So, okay. But that's why if you have your own SSDI, James, because you've been able to work, not SGA, because if you'd worked SGA, you would have lost DAC. So you always have to be careful with that SGA, right? And then, but you have SSDI. It sounds like you're saying your date less insured is 2028. You could switch over to SSDI, or if you lost your DAC now, the recency test is what creates that DLI, James. So if your DLI is in the future, you're fine with the recency test. Sorry, guys, I'm just keep looking down at his questions, because it's really good questions. And there's so many people that are very interested in DAC, because it's what, and parents in particular, because, when we have disabled children and we know we're not going to be around forever to take care of them, that DAC is just so important. We don't want them to be on SSI. We want them to have their own, which DAC would be. And it's not welfare, it's the insurance. So we want that for them. If your dad worked more than 8 years before he, passed away. You're saying just 8 years in the straight before he passed away. That's fine. Once he was vested for Social Security retirement, that never leaves you. There's no recency test for that. When you get your 40, dad got his 40 credits, he was good. But going back to your thing, James, and you could be getting a little bit of SSDI, and then the rest is DAC on top of it, because DAC was higher, but you had your own work record. That's good. There's nothing else for you to get then. So unless there's another question, if you're getting both already, you're already in. And the recency test, no, does not apply, because you're already collecting. So from what it sounds like, okay? Feel free to clarify that. Justin, SSA sent me a letter update to me and Congressman. Okay, you reached out to your congressperson. Hearing is August. SSA account doesn't list ALJ judge yet. That's fine. If you got a hearing notice, though, with a date, there is a judge on there. So read your letter. Not your SSA account, your letter, the one that you got in the mail. It is from the judge, generally, once they have a date, because that judge has to be free. They have to have a judge free, and that's the judge that's noted on there. So take a look, see at that. Vols 85. Welcome. I don't know if we met before. Maybe we did. I'm not sure. So I was recently told I was approved on April 15 by my local office. Sweet. How long after it gets to the payment center should I be getting my first deposit? It went to payment center on April 17th. Usually just within a few weeks, I'd say. It sounds like you were awarded on initial or recon, so that's great. Congratulations on that. Not having to do that long haul like most people do. Usually it's just a few weeks. If you're dual, like SSI and SSD, it can take longer because two different offices, two different minds are doing first the SSI calculations. Then when that's done, they usually pay it out. And they do the SSD calculations, which they have to subtract from the SSD back benefits the amount they paid you for SSI, if you can follow what I just said. So that can take a little bit longer. And then, of course, you have probably back benefits, and those can take a little bit longer, but not necessarily. I see people get them in 4 days, and they're not due their first monthly till like the end of the next month or whatever. But if it goes more than certainly 60 days, even a month, I think, 4 weeks. Yeah, you're only at about 2 weeks now. You could give the field office a buzz. Okay. Love T609 won his or her disability case and has received his first check today. His or her, sorry. That's great. Ms. Frantic, I had a hearing set for today, and the attorney called last night and said that he got an email saying that it was canceled and that I received a favorable outcome. I think he also said OTR. Ms. Frantic, that is the best. I mean, it would have been better, ironically, with OTRs. They always come the eve of. Now, they're rare, guys, so don't be waiting and staying up all night before your hearing thinking you might get an OTR. They are rare. If I get one once a year, I'm excited. But they are great because you get to skip the hearing and that part of the stress is over. But wouldn't it be nice if the OHO office had only looked at that when they first got it, reviewed it? Now, if they got something post-appeal for ALJ filing that wasn't, provided before, they couldn't have looked at it if you didn't provide it. But if that was there and they just disagree because they have a little bit more discretion and maybe intellectual review than initial or recon, they're not just check boxes, then it'd be nice if they would have done it sooner. So you didn't have to wait all these months and stress. And your lawyer probably did a brief, that could have saved him that, he did all the other work getting that stuff in and, submitting a comment here and there about what might be important. He may have or may not have done a brief, which is a very time-consuming, labor-intensive part of the process for those of us that do briefs, which I think they're great for more than one reason. But he told me to, she goes on, to be by the phone just in case, which seems strange. Nobody ever called. So does this mean I was approved? Yeah, I would think so because he said it was canceled. So I don't know why he would say stay by the phone. I don't think you have to worry about that. Congratulations, by the way. I know you've been stressed out. Art of practice. If one doctor recommends surgery, but a second opinion doctor recommends avoid surgery, yeesh, how can a claimant not harm their SSDI claim if they choose no surgery? Oh, I think if you have both of these opinions, we have a video, by the way, on medical recommendation compliance and how to avoid being non-compliant when you're not going to do something that is recommended. Because you have good reason. If you don't have good reason, then you're kind of screwed on that. But you have two doctors, and assuming this is in writing, if it's not in writing, it didn't happen. It's like Las Vegas, right? If one doctor recommends surgery and the second opinion doctor recommends avoiding surgery, that is I don't want to say the perfect scenario, but that is the perfect scenario for you not doing it. If that's, if you're trying to make sure you're not going to be seen as non-compliant. Because you actually have an actual doctor that says, in your case, you should avoid surgery. The other guy thinks, nah, I think the risk is okay. But in the end, it's your decision. There was, I think in the most recent video we did on that, which wasn't very recent, it's probably in the last year though, it goes a little bit into, I think it might have been stemming from case law, but a blanket, I'm not doing surgery because I don't want to take the risk, doesn't hold water legally, at least not in the circuit opinion that came out. But because you can't just use a general surgery is risky, because all surgery is risky. However, if you say, if it says, and you want this kind of documented in the medical record, so you want your doctor to document it. If you say, the doctor indicated there was like a 50% chance it wouldn't work, that the risks are high, and he gave me the list of death and, paralyzation and, this, that, and the other thing. And he says, some people, a certain portion of people actually feel worse, maybe 30%, that is a very, very high risk. My pain is very bad and I can't work. However, I'm not in bed all day, every day on opioids. And I'm afraid that if I do that surgery and I'm one of those 50% that it doesn't help, and or one of those 30%, and I'm making up those numbers, guys, one of those 30% that is left in more pain, and I become, now I need opioids far more than I did before, or, if I never did before or whatever. An explanation, a discussion, and you want it to be documented. So the part about the doctor documenting it is often automatically in there. They will say, we discussed the risks, including blah, 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 blah. So if you're, if you maybe message him and say, I just want to go over those risks, and doc, when we discussed how risky it was, and that there was a not low chance that I could be worse off than I am now, while there is a chance that I could be better. We realize that the risk is very high, and we're gonna wait for now, due to the risk of my pain being worse or my limitation being more, and then me having to have a far more limited life than I do now. You could do something like that. I know I'm getting a little wordy here. You're going to word it in your own way. But the documentation, and I don't even think you necessarily need it here, because you already have 2 doctors in writing that contradict each other. Right there, that's a kind of a no-brainer in terms of having a reason not to. 50% of the doctors that you had said, don't do it. That's pretty ironclad. Hi, Trish Wade. Good to see you. Art of Practice continues. Does the claimant need a letter from the doctor explaining why they should avoid surgery? Sometimes it's in the record. If you didn't put it in the record at all and just kind of verbally told it to you, yeah, maybe ask. I don't know that he'll do it, but it could be the risk of your own failed prior surgery, because he probably looked at everything about you. He didn't just make a blanket thing that said the surgeries generally shouldn't be happening to anybody. But yeah, you could do that if it's not clear otherwise in his records that he, I would think that if he was there for like a second opinion, he would have put that in writing, like, I don't recommend this and why. So, but look at your file, you'll see. Michael Kingsley. If an individual is granted SSDI, how much additional money is granted if the claimant has a child under the age of 18? A child under the age of 18 would be a dependent. So he's talking about dependent benefits, guys. That child is not disabled, doesn't have to be disabled. It's all dependents, all the children. So if you have one child, Michael, that should be, if that child is the only one claiming under your work record other than you, due to the family max, which is a whole another story, you guys are not going to have a family max problem, because the child's going to be able to get his full 50%. So if you're getting 2,000, the child will get 1,000. If you had 2 kids, just going on a tangent here, guys, they each could get up to 50%. But if the family max for the individual is 150% of the PIA of the dad, then those 2 are going to be splitting that, whatever's that 50%. So if he had the $2,000, let's just say $2,000, the 50% is that's left over after he takes his 100%, dad takes his 100%, is 1,000. 2 children are going to be splitting that, so they'll each get 500. If there's 3 kids, it's going to be split 3 ways. when one kid ages out, then the other two get to raise their portion accordingly. The family max, I don't know the exact number, but it can be as low as 150%, and that's usually for lower income earners. It's going to be lower. And it can go up to, I think, 180 or a little bit more than 180%. So it all depends on what yours is. You can likely ask the SSA that question, like when you call in about your case or whatnot, if you can get someone on the phone. I think it's getting a little better, but it's going to take some time. Janelle, how are you? It's been 7 months since my hearing. I have a lawyer. Should I call about any updates or just wait? Wow, you guys haven't messaged back and forth in his portal? I'd be getting messages out the yin yang from my clients if it was 7 months. That's a long time. He's probably just going to say we haven't gotten the decision yet. End of story. But it is a long time, and it doesn't really mean one way or the other what the response is, but that is a long time. I don't like that, 7 months, but hang in there. And yeah, I would reach out to him. It's his job to kind of let you know that we didn't get a decision either. It's not just, you didn't just miss it in the mail. Because, that can happen with the U.S. mail these days. It could have gone out. There's a decision, and he's not doing anything about it. I didn't notify you, which would probably be because it would be a negative, right? But, yeah, I would reach out. Umo, Umo A. Hi, Stephanie. John M. here. Hi, John M. Forgot about your live stream until it came up on YouTube for me. It's funny. I see people who message me in here and they have one name. And then when they show up and I don't know what your name, John, is on YouTube. I don't know how exactly it works. I don't even know what mine is. But they'll be like, I'm so-and-so. I message you. I do comments. I'm like, oh, okay. Anyway, thanks for popping in, John. It's always fun here. Deb's giving some information. RD, have you had a hearing with ALJ Clara Aranda? Doesn't ring a bell. If so, your thoughts. I had a hearing with her in June. Yeah, there are so many ALJs. Yeah, I don't even recognize the name. I don't know where she's out of. Good luck, though. Good luck with that hearing. Make sure you're going to the doctors, getting all those medical records in, updating those diagnostics. Your lawyer will tell you, or your non-attorney rep. Justin Yu says he did not get letter with ALJ judge on it. Just a letter with same information that my SSA online shows. All right, so Justin Yu, I think you're saying they gave you a date. You can see it in your online access, but it doesn't mention the judge, that's, I guess, what they do. But you should have gotten a letter. So I would call the judge's office and ask if there's been a hearing letter and who your judge is. You can call the OHO, Office of Hearings Operations. They might have been the one that you should have gotten before the hearing schedule letter, notice of hearing. There is previous letters that they send out saying, we have your case, and do you want an MS Teams hearing? And do you insist on an in-person? Will you do a phone? All that, all those things, your hearings options. So I would look at that and get the number and call in. They're very nice. Generally speaking, you're going to get the receptionist, and she's probably going to be able to get your answer. It's not like you're going to talk to the judge. Deborah Gill. Hi, Deborah. Good morning to you, too. I had 2 CEs in March. That's consultative examinations for anyone who doesn't know that lingo. 2 weeks later, they wanted to know about my last job. I worked as a sterilization tech. I have RA and M61. What do you think? I can't say much because I don't know your medical record quality. If you've been a really robust patient, doing all of the robust treatment that is best for building evidence, or if you've been more of a I only go when I have to type of person, which, by the way, I'm that kind of person. So I would be a terrible claimant, but I'm not a claimant. So that's why I can, what do they call it? I don't practice what I preach, but I'm also not in the same boat. And I would if I was. Believe me, I'd be the squeaky wheel for sure. I don't know the answer to that, Deb, because I don't know those details that I would need to know. You are in a good age range if everything else lines up. Guys, she's 61. The grids would apply. Sterilization tech suggests to me it was a I'm going to say high-skilled job, which makes it harder to prevail. But with the grids, here's what she would be doing, generally speaking. She would have to prove, A, she can't do the sterilization tech job full-time due to her medical conditions, whether it's mental, can't keep up, anxiety, poor memory, whatever that is. It could be mental, it could be physical, it could be a combination of both. She has to prove that she is unable to do more than light or sedentary work. So even if she can, from a physical standpoint, do light or sedentary work, she can still prevail if she meets one more condition, and that is that none of those sterilization tech skills that she can't do at that job could be transferred to a light or sedentary job, the ones that she could still do potentially, but they wouldn't transfer and that's a good chance of that one being met, Deborah, because I'm thinking sterilization tech. I'm curious. I could make a joke or two about that, but I won't. That seems like something very specific, hands-on. Usually with a tech, we're hands-on. We're not just sitting at a desk usually, I think. And they don't really transfer that well. There's not jobs of substantial numbers where those little pieces of knowledge you have from there directly transfer to this job, So you probably have a good chance if that medical evidence establishes that you cannot do a medium level exertional job. Can't do a medium level exertional job, can't do the old job, and can't transfer those skills. And then bingo, you went on a grid. Okay. Probably wondering, well, you're still on initial, perhaps? You're having 2 CEs? It might get you there. If not, and if you're not represented, definitely feel free to go to joydisability.com and fill out that right-hand top side link left-hand side for the free SSD evaluation. We'll take a look for you, okay? Shannon Herrick. Hi, Shannon. What are the general questions for an SSI review? Usually it's financial. They're going to want to know if you have any income coming in the door. Are you working? Have you changed your living arrangements? Because you know how living arrangements make a difference. Are you getting free room and board, or are you paying your own way? Do you have any other income? It is a financial look. Otherwise, it would be a CDR, checking out if you're still disabled. So it's just to see that your finances have not changed. You don't have $50K underneath your mattress, If you do have things that are evident that they came upon in other filings of like other entities, maybe IRS or whatever, like such as you're working or someone gave you a 1099 because you won a lottery or, those are the kind of things too, because that kind of income will affect eligibility, because the SSI is only for those that don't have those kind of resources in which to self-support for at least a few months. And then they'd be asked to, and then when they don't have money to self-support, they could go back on the SSI welfare. So it's all the financial stuff. And if nothing has changed, you should be fine. James. Hello, James. I'm on SSDI only. Do I need to continue working under SGA to be eligible for SSDI later when I get another No. Good question, James. Once you're on SSDI, it is tolled. TOLLED. It is stayed. All the years that you were on SSDI, you do not have to have earned any credits. It would literally jump from one to the next. So your insured status, whatever you had left, is still there. And when you're under a continuing disability review, your SSDI is not stopped. You are still on SSDI. It's only if you get ceased. So that is a cool question, because I think I've seen that before. People are like, do I have to keep working a little bit to keep my credits up? So if I get a CDR, I could prove I'm still insured. No. You are insured perpetually when you're on SSDI. Okay. So don't you worry about that. You can stop working altogether and you're fine. Love T609. You're a he. Okay. Very nice. Either way, wouldn't matter to me. Dimple, good to see you from Ohio. And I am back, Dimple. Passed through Ohio once and twice last week. Love T. Yeah, maybe I need to change my nickname. Well, it's just, you know, optics, and I'm a bit of a sexist. Love, sometimes when people start with that, we usually think it's a female. Doesn't have to be. So either way, you just might have to clarify sometimes for people like me. But no harm, no foul either way. Guys can call themselves love, right? Why not? Umo again. Hello, all. Does anyone know of any resources to help fill out paperwork, even for Attorney Joy's paperwork? I have a cognitive impairment and problems understanding instructions. Thanks. You guys, if you have anything to add to him or her, feel free. Just type it in the comments. I always say this too, because we do. My clients know we gather data really robustly in the beginning of our cases. We get stuff from our clients when they are at their best. In fact, I was just talking to one of my assistants today about why we put the packets that we need, the data, in the order we do, because we do one and we get it back, then we give you the next, so it's not overwhelming. And there's usually a total of, after you do the signups, there's a total of three, usually. And I do the heftiest one first, because I want people at their freshest when they're not burned out. And what I say to people too, a lot, some of you might be listening, a page a day. Just do a page a day. It'll get done. I have people that get them done, get all the packets done in 3 days. That's just the way they are. And then other people, it takes almost the whole 6 months of our protective filing if we have one. Sometimes people blow their protective filing because they don't get them back in time. But one page a day, and put it aside, and then just come back the next day and do another page. The biggest bulk of it is you're putting down your doctor's names and addresses, and when you approximately when you started seeing them, and when your last visit was, and that's really probably the heftiest part of it. Then we also get the information needed for what will be demanded of you later, which is the function report and the work history report. And we get these from the onset before they're going to be asked of you, because we help you draft them up based on your information, and then further communications we may have if there's clarifications needed. That way, when the reports are due, yours are already done because you've already provided that information. And now you can sit back and relax while we go to town and get all final drafts out for you and blah, 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 and submit them for you. But we get this data, the data that we gain on activities and work history, which is for us, it's called jobs history, but it's similar, is also used for that application. Because I don't want something, if I use what you give me for the application, I would say, guys, like 60% of the time, if not more, a date, it's inconsistent with a date on the work history information. I want it so that I get both beforehand so we can cross-reference. We just did it today, and I had to talk to somebody who might be listening, I'm not sure, threw out a text this morning like, hey, from the portal, because we use a portal for a lot of things. What date did you start working? Was that June or August? You used both dates in two various different areas. And I said, specifically, when was your last day of work? That was the question. And that's when I got the proper answer. But because the SSA has things asked in various ways, it's not like the person's being deceptive. It's very confusing. So we sometimes have to clarify those things. And yeah, if we didn't have that later document, we would not have known, because the original documentation, I think, said August, and the later documentation said June. And I would prefer June. The older back we go, the more back benefits potentially are available. So it's kind of important. So we get that stuff up front. It's in a staggered format. Like I said, it goes to the portal, and they'll fill out one and get it back. And then ideally the same day. It gets sometimes a little few days off if we're overly busy or I'm traveling like I have been recently. I'm really looking forward to. I do have to travel this weekend, but after that, I plan on being like, kind of laying low, hibernating in my office, if you will. But yeah, one day at a time with the paperwork, guys. It's the way to get it done if you're not the type of person who gets overwhelmed with paper. The other thing I love is when somebody has a family member. Usually it's a spouse. Sometimes it's an adult child who's going to be a liaison. They'll be in our portal too. And they help with all. I have probably 30% of my cases are like that, maybe more. And that's really wonderful too. When you have someone that you can trust who's game on, to help you get this done. And they're the ringleader on your side. And it can work out really well. There's occasions when I have clients who are really so troubled. Their disability is so great. Usually it's a combo of physical and mental. And oftentimes the mental is so exacerbated by the physical, pain, chronic pain, that I do very little communicating with the client because it's their spouse or their adult child or on occasion, a very close friend. So, but if you guys have things to share with Umo about, oops, the dogs are going off. Can you guys hear that? And the birds. If you have any ideas about that, feel free to share them. I'd say 99% can get through it if they take their time, but I'm sure there's some that can't. So you got to have a liaison. One other thing, Umo, sometimes if you're on welfare, like local welfare, getting, you have a welfare office that you go to or a caseworker, they will sometimes help you fill out paperwork. Now, they don't really do a great job, but that's okay because that's why none of the paperwork you fill out is going to the SSA. We're looking at everything, proofreading everything, editing everything. If we see an inconsistent error, we're going to follow up with you on it. But that helps you get through that chore too. That's probably less frequent, but it's great when it's available to somebody. So check it out. Okay. Ms. Frantic. I think you're referring to that OTR, Ms. Frantic. Thank you. She says, he seemed very confused, like he had never seen this before. I'm just glad they didn't call. OTRs are rare. And if he hasn't been practicing that long, it could be that he has never seen one. So that's entirely possible. You could probably go years, particularly if he has a small caseload because he's new. The chances of getting one is probably he never had one. So now he got the joy of that. So I'm happy for him too. Okay, so this is my Aloha friend. I started getting SSI October 2024. Okay, so I'm getting nationwide min. That's the 967 I think you're talking about. Or was it 47, 2024? Oh, no, you're up to 967. But I live in a house that my grandfather built. It's a family home, but it's not under my name, so I get deducted $300 because no rent. I've got an idea. Why don't you start paying rent of at least $300? At least then there'll be $300 coming into the household. That is, and you pay it to whoever owns the house. It's there for that instead of them gifting you that piece, since it's not your house. Apparently, you're not on the deed, so you're a tenant that doesn't get charged. But if you paid, that certain amount, and I think it would be that new way they're doing it. So really, it's closer to $400 that you would probably be paying, but you're going to kind of walk away with the same amount. But now it's at least coming into the household. Just an idea. Start getting under a rental agreement. You don't have to be, living for free when you have income coming in. If, you're going to get more if you're actually paying rent. Capiche? Just an idea there, Aloha. because no rent. And then he continued on, where he or she, where is the money going to? It's going to the estate. Is there a record showing all my deductions? I don't know what you're talking about there. Sorry. You sounded like. All right, I'm going to go back up. I started getting SSI October 24th, so I'm getting nationwide min, but I live in a house. It's not a main, so I get to. What do you mean you get deducted? That implied that the SSI program was deducting $300 because you were getting in-kind income of free room and board, free room. But now you're saying here that it's going to the estate. So you are paying rent to the owner, which is the estate, right? Do you have you're saying, is there a record showing all my deductions? If the SSA is withholding, or the SSI program, however you want to look at it, is withholding, they're not withholding. They're actually saying you're not due that $300. And that's what I was assuming you were saying, that you have a reduction because you have $300 of free rent, and you're saying, no, it's not free. I'm actually paying it. It doesn't, the SSA doesn't take it out and pay it for you. If you have a representative payee who's controlling your monies, they might be doing that. Okay, so might want to figure out that. Okay, so finishing up that, you need to check out those things. Aloha. James again. I am on SSDI only under my father's work record. Do I need to continue? Oh, we already went through this one, didn't we? Did I shoot back up by accident? Or did you guys duplicate your questions? Okay. Okay, Ms. Frantic, who recently prevailed in what seems like an OTR. I'm so excited for you. I filed in September 2022. My onset date was April of 2022. Does that mean I'll get back pay for that entire time minus the 5 months? I filed. Now, when you say your onset date, was that your alleged onset date? If you got an OTR and you did not change your alleged onset date, the only way a judge can give you an OTR and not allow you a hearing is if he gives you a fully favorable, which means he agrees with your alleged onset date. So let's assume that's what happened here. Her alleged onset date was April of 2022. He found it to be April 2022, May, June, July, August, September, unpaid of 2022, first back payment October of 2022 to the present. You're going to get a nice chunk of change. Good for you. Use it well. So yes, I believe you'll get back pay for that entire time minus 5 months if what I'm understanding from your facts is correct. T Cash, how are you? Good to see you. Thank you for what you do. Oh, you're welcome. Do you know anything about the Ticket to Work program? I am currently on SSDI. I want to try to get back to work. Okay. I just go to work and then notify the SSA. That is not the Ticket to Work program. Guys, don't confuse going back to work with hooking up with the Ticket to Work program. Some people hate the Ticket to Work program. Ticket to Work program, and there's nothing wrong with it, but you just need to know you can go back to work. Don't even think about a Ticket to Work program. If you're going back to work is intended to be part-time and under SGA because you know you can't do more than that on a sustained basis. You will hurt yourself or you'll screw up or you'll get fired or whatever. So keep it under SGA at the very minimum. And don't worry about Ticket to Work. Ticket to Work is when people want to work as much as they can, including over SGA, in order to get off of SSDI. So I wouldn't, you use up your trial work period, I would, and it gives them protections while they do that, which you kind of already have with trial work period anyway. So if you want to make a few extra bucks, which I think is great, and I think you guys know me, I have this horn all the time, going back to work part-time, safely, securely, following the rules. Don't just do it blindly like a bull in a china shop. While on SSDI, and I'm talking specifically about SSDI, not SSI right here, it's a great thing to do. You're going to want to pick the job carefully. looking at an abundance of factors, and you want to steer clear of SGA, which is 1620 this year, and that's gross. So you take your hourly rate, times it by the hours worked, and make sure you are far from 1620 total in what you earn that month. Notice that there are 4.3 weeks on average in a month. So I would use that if you're going to have to use, what you would have thought was 4 weeks for a month. It's not. It's 4.3. And be careful about people asking for extra shifts. Be careful about automatic raises. Don't take raises if you don't have to. And I always say, try not to flirt with that 1620. Stay in the 13s. Obviously, the higher the pay per hour, the less hours you can work and stay under that. I have people that make like $60 an hour. They can work like 3 hours a week. I mean, it's really funny. And it's the person really couldn't work more than that, ironically. Very high skilled work, but it was a very unique condition. And the brain power and the stamina wouldn't allow for that high level of thinking more than very limited. So, and a very kind employer who offers those hours. So very unique. It was out of Jersey. Surprise, surprise. My old stomping ground. Okay. Okay. Aloha continues. I was told it went to other recipients to get SSI. All right. So you're not, I think you're mistaken, Aloha, when you think it went to the state. Oh, see, you said a state. Did you mean the state? No, SSI would be the feds. But yes, if it was, your SSI was reduced because you're living, you don't need the portion, the 1/3 of it that is for housing, because you got a nice family that's letting you live scot-free. If you get into a rental arrangement where you pay them, say, $400 a month, I think that would be probably sufficient. They'll give you the whole $967. Your family can do whatever they will with that, whoever owns the house. Maybe they pay your cell phone bill and you don't have to pay that anymore. Whatever it is, the point is you're paying rent officially. You'll get your full $967 because you're not getting you said the min. Whatever that meant. But you start paying rents, that money will come back. And at least that money can be then used in the household that you live in, whether it's to help pay the heat bill or, I don't know, keep the fridge stocked, Okay. Steve-O McMahon. What a cool name. I applied in December 2023, currently in step 3. I'm 59. Oh, you've been waiting a long time, huh? You're one of those that didn't have an adjudicator for a year. I'm 59, right? BKE, amputee, and other impairments. I only have a GED. You're probably wondering, you didn't ask. The rest of his question is as follows. Oops, you repeat it. Last job was unskilled in 2023, applied in December. Currently in step 3. BKA, refresh me. Many more health issues. Okay, we all qualify to be reviewed under the grid rules. And for technical reasons, we always say over the age of 50, but technically they have a grid rule for those under. It just means the whole grid is not disabled, not disabled, not disabled. So it really is only practical over 50. So at 59, which is, I'm breathing down that neck myself, the grid rules they would be applying. Absolutely. You have to prove, and I talked about this with our 61-year-old here today, that you have to prove that you can't do any of your past relevant work in the last 5 years, and that you cannot do medium or above work, and that if you have any skills from work in the last 5 years, unskilled doesn't have skills, so that one wouldn't count. But if there was any other jobs in that 5-year past relevant work period that are transferable to a light or sedentary job. And if you are found, even though you can't do medium, you could do light or you could do sedentary, and this job, those skills could transfer to that job, then you would lose. But if those skills don't transfer, or you don't have any skilled work in the last 5 years, maybe you had it before then and not now, and you can prove medically. Now, being an amputee does not necessarily win the case. We've talked about this in other videos. It can be, in fact, often it won't, because a lot of amputees have prosthetics that work well for them. So like that might not eliminate medium jobs. I don't know. I'd have to specifically see it. You've been waiting a really long time, Steve-O. I'm appalled, of course, at the delay. I wonder where your case is now. Do you have an adjudicator yet? Have you reached out to anyone? Do you have a representative? Have they reached out? If you don't have a representative and you want to be considered for one, you can contact us go to joydisability.com. There's a little link in the upper left that says free SSD eval, and it'll come to me. Just mention that you spoke to me on here, all right, so that they know to shoot it right over to me. All right, James, I think we saw this question before. Glamour Girl, good to see you. Welcome back. Do you receive 2 back pays when you have minor children? One for self, one for aux? I think so. I think they do probably pay them separately. Yep, I'm gonna go with that, because sometimes they're also at different times. Like the aux can take a little bit longer. Because you don't normally apply for the aux until you already have the entitlement yourself. So then all that. So yeah, there should be a separate check. Tiger Bite, good to see you again. Apparently, I have a new claim agent. I was recently sent to function capacity and work form. And a week later, ROI, that's the 827, guys, the medical authorization she's referring to. Should I resend all of my other evidence and therapist notes? No. Nope. The adjudicator you have has the entire file as it was last left. So you're good. If you have more treatment records or treatment visits, I would be getting her the name of the whatever doctor, like whether it's you've been going for a long time or it's new. I would be getting them all those new visit dates. If you had anything major going on, any diagnostics that were in there, let her know so they know to order them, so they can update everything. Jackie Johnson, hello. Nice to meet you. I don't think we chatted before, did we? My hubby got a fully favorable decision at 57 years old. The ALJ applied grid rule 20206. Will he still get a CDR at 57 with a grid rule favorable decision? Presumably. Yeah. I mean, he's grid ruled out now. If he improves, that whole medical portion of what applies to grids would not apply. So, yeah. Now, does that mean he has a good chance of losing the CDR? Not at all. In fact, they might just review, behind the scenes and say, we're going to bypass you. Because by then, now you don't know what his diary is. Is his diary 5 to 7? Is his diary 2 years? Is it, so much depends on what his medical condition is as to what that diary would be. But if it was 5 to 7, now he's going to be, 62, 3, or 4. And the chance of being denied would be slim, because it means significant improvement, even, more than minor improvement. It happens, but, and we just had a discussion on this the other day, an example of when it would happen. I'm 57 years old and I had to have a surgery, and it gives you a year for recovery. And that's really the only thing wrong with me, and they're going to make CDR me for 18 months from the date of the surgery. And if I did sedentary work like I do, and there's nothing wrong with my brain yet, and that surgery fixed my problem, is there a reason why I couldn't do this? And so I would get CDR'd and I'd presumably lose it. I would like to think that I would have told them I'm recovered, cut me off, but I know people don't tend to do that. Jackie, I just got approved on 28. Do you mean April 28th, 2025? I didn't need a lawyer. Good for you. Yep. See, that happens. So we have Jackie and we have Jackie Johnson, who I was just talking to. He got a bench decision at his hearing. How long will it take to get his lump sum payment? As long as anybody else. What's nice about that bench decision, which are very rare, very, very rare. I've had one. 20 years. One. I was like, what is that? It was a long time ago, too. It was probably 15 years ago. Then they should be able to send it out instead of waiting 3 months for a written decision. They should be able to send that right out to the payment center. I'm not sure which little arms it goes through, but it goes right out for whoever's going to be paying it to pay it, and or the field office, and then to the payment center. Probably that's the way it goes. But so you're missing that whole somewhat lengthy step, which can be typically at least 6 weeks or 10 weeks and longer sometimes for the written decision to be drafted by the decision writer. So after the decision is made. So in that sense, it's kind of sped up a little bit, Jackie. And a bench decision. I can't say this for sure, Jackie, but when we were talking before about will he get a CDR, at some point, it's a good shot. I feel like if it's a bench decision, it was really, really extremely obvious, his disability. Maybe it was a listing. And that probably lends itself to better chance that any kind of CDR would certainly be 5 to 7, but also maybe be one of those things where they just say, we're deciding not to review at this time. And by then you're breathing down full retirement age, a few years later. So there is that. Uma, what's in packet number 3? You mean my packets? Packet number 3 is activities of daily living and symptoms and limitations that you can describe with certain activities. It's a 3-part. We call it triplets. And it includes job history details. And it includes an actual copy of the 3380, which is the function report third party that the person can then give to family member to fill out. So yeah, we get these things done early so that, when the SSA wants them, boom, they get them fast. There's no delay in the case waiting for claimant's information. The claimant doesn't have to pull it out of their mind at that time and struggle over it and all that, because we've kind of already done that without the pressure of having the case and the deadline. Because when they send you a function report, guys, or a work history report, they give you a 10-day deadline. Now, granted, you can ask for an extension once, but you get it on day 9. So even with the extension, you still only have 10 days. So it's nice to have it done in advance. I even tell people that are pro se, download the 3373 off the internet and the work history report. And by the way, they've both been revamped in 2024. Well, the function report is identical to before, but the work history report is a little more robust. And get to work on them while you're applying and stuff, or as soon as you apply, get to work on them. That way, when you get that demand, you're like, got it. You don't have to freak out, because people do. I have people that get paralyzed. They're paralyzed. They can't finish it. They come to me. They're not even my clients. And they come to me and they're already like 5 days late. I do a lot of consultations on that. Costs them money, but then they get it done, and they get it done right. Let's see. Oh, yeah. So going back to Jackie, approved and didn't use a lawyer. And that is great because it does happen, right? I'm biased, of course, because it doesn't happen for most people, but it does happen. Maeve, what a cool little way you have your name. How did you do that? Do you guys see that? Little squiggly here, squiggly there. So Maeve says, I should have researched this to know that the function and work history would be coming. I just finished the work history, which was due today, but arrived Saturday. See what I mean? With U.S. Postal Service, it never gets there timely. I mean, I get stuff 2 weeks late, so it would be overdue. Same with the function exam next. Okay, well, now you know. And if you need an extension, just call them. If you don't, by the way, I'm pretty sure they're going to send you a reminder letter probably this week, and they give you another 10 days. So don't stress about missing the first deadline. I would stress about the second one. Did I miss a question? Deep Seawick. That's what happens when I jump around to get people's part 2. I got a reversal remanded from the federal judge. Does that mean the ALJ has to grant me SSDI? No, it does not. If they wanted it, if they were awarding you, it would have been a reversal. Well, you said a reversal remanded. I don't know what you mean. If it's remanded back to a judge, it means the judge generally has to do. The SSA has to take a look at it. Usually the appeals council will look at it. They'll see if they can flip it based on whatever the criteria was. Usually it's something technical that you had to win, even if you agree with the judge's findings. Now something happened, maybe an age change, so he wins on the age change. But otherwise it goes back to the same judge and he gives you a new hearing. And he has to do what they said he forgot to do before he renders a decision. And he still gets to render a decision on his discretion. Okay. We do see a lot of reversals by the judge, however. So that's not, I'd say that's, in my case, almost always we win on remands, but it doesn't necessarily mean you get the same date you wanted. Sometimes it's a little different than that. Good afternoon from Michigan. All right, yeah, I blew through some of these guys. That's because I jumped down to finish, I think it's Steve-O, his. All right, now I'm going to scroll down and see where I left off. I know I spoke to Maeve. Lee Elizabeth, Todd, hi there, stranger. I want to thank you for all of your help. I finally got everything resolved after asking Congressperson for help, finally. Success with your help. You're the, well, thank you. That's very nice. It was great. It was great working with you, for sure. So don't be a stranger. Do not be a stranger. Okay. Michael Whitley. Nice to see you again, Michael. Is a month after a CE exam a long time to wait for a decision at the initial stage? I would say no. However, we often see them within a few weeks. But, the last few years, it's been not necessarily that way. But I'd say it's getting a little long. Usually there's a determination after the CE exam. Now, there's certain things that would logically extend that. For instance, you had the CE exam, but you notified the adjudicator, or the adjudicator saw on records that you have an upcoming MRI, like in 2 weeks. And they're like, oh, we want the results of that. Before we give everything to the medical guy to stick you with an RFC, we want to see the results of this MRI. Because if you notice, they don't give MRIs at CE exams. They'll do x-rays at times, but they won't do an MRI. They won't pay for it, which is horrible. I mean, I get it. MRIs are expensive, but, a lot of the time, x-rays just don't cut it for the kind of things that are going to be disabling in the back and stuff like that. Yeah, Michael, you just got to have patience and keep letting the adjudicator know of new appointments and anything new going on, because I assume you're treating robustly, right? Keep that adjudicator informed if you don't have a representative. You're going to have to make that contact and do that. Maeve, yes, parrots. I do. I have 2 Conure What do they call them? Those little dudes. And a cockatiel. That's an old dude. Yeah, I have one of those sun conures, and the other one's called a turquoise conure, which is silly. They just call them after their colors, you know. But they're very sweet and fun, and they're very loud when they want to be. I feel like I've been a little neglectful lately. I haven't had them out as much as we normally do, just with all the travel and everything going on. I feel like it's been months. So one day I keep saying I'm going to put the green screen back here, which is a pain in the ass, which is why I don't do it, guys. But back here, and then, you know, if I'm hanging out with one on my shoulder, you can actually see them. But if I have them now, or even during regular, like the Zoomed 9 a.m. video type stuff, those ad hoc things throughout the day, you won't see it unless I have the green screen. And I just haven't put it up because I don't have time for it. You know, I'm not here to have a pretty background per se, you know, informative, not pretty. Yeah, Umo, that's the birds and the dogs. And I bet you someone came in here. I have a feeling it was my assistant who left. We were working here together today on an application together, and left the laptop here. So he generally, you know, can work from home, but he wanted to come here this time to learn something and have me there in case it went awry. So anyway, we did that. Let's see. It's a bit of a zoo here, Umo. I also have 3 dogs and 3 cats. Not my fault. The 2 birds are my fault. That's it. Oh, and 3 tortoises. One walks around. He's behind me. This is where she lives with me. Jim McMillan. Let's go. I may grit out at my hearing, but I have a BS in crim. Okay. Is there case law I can use as persuasive evidence? I'm in Arizona, by the way. There's not enough facts here, Jim, but if your BS in criminal law is more than a few years old, I mean a few, like a little handful, certainly if it's more than 5 years, certainly, it's not going to make a hill of beans. You're never going to be considered illiterate if you graduated high school. High school is considered educated. The education we have after that really only impacts if it was recently enough so that it could immediately transfer us into a skilled job. With educational degrees, you know, it's not hands-on experience. So definitely do not find that to be a problem at all. And there is probably POMs on that, or Social Security rulings on that, and probably case law too. But look under SSA.gov even. There's probably something there. But if you have access to case law, go for it. You know, but the education is never, ever an issue. If, first of all, BS and criminal, and again, if it's not, and I understand what you're saying about the grids, because it would be a transferable skill. You're thinking, where is that going to transfer to, first of all? Because you have to be proving you're already down below medium. You can only do light or sedentary work. I don't know what your other prior work is. Prior work history, the prior relevant work in the last 5 years is way more important than an old degree. You know, so that is to your benefit. But I can't say more without knowing more about your case, obviously. Let's see. Okay, aloha. It's not going to the estate. You meant it's going back to the government. I think you meant, right? Yeah. So all you have to do is, I mean, for the amount they're deducting, which I think is probably different than 300, is probably 300 and something. So if you can find out what that is, it's probably that presumed value, the 1/3. And if your family charges you at least that amount, or your landlord, and you pay, you know, then that amount should be added back. If you're responsible for paying it out, now you need that amount to pay it. so it's not going to harm you if you think about it. And it's going to be putting more money into your household. And I assume that's something you want to do. It's either going to stay in the SSI fund, which I respect that too. Like, you know, if they're super wealthy and whatever, and they can, you know, billionaires and you don't need it, then great. But, you know, if they're regular, just, you know, working people, why not pay them that rent? And you're using electricity, you're using all that stuff. And, you know, the rules have you entitled to that. And I use the word entitled loosely, but under the rules, yes, right? Okay. Yeah, deep Seawick. I know you got skipped over, but I went back to you. My apologies. That was not on purpose. It was because I was jumping down to get part 2 of somebody's. I got to do better. Sorry. Maeve. SSDI claim in progress. I was system analyst, high skilled desk job. So sedentary, presumably. And high school for sure. No degrees though, not even high school. I know. Isn't that the beauty of it? I think college should just be like, whew, tossed out the window. Biggest scam ever. I cannot keep up due to headaches, pain, frequent injuries due to aging. I'm 61 now, right? Okay. Am I doomed? Not doomed if you do it right. You have the sedentary, but the nuances of your job are really important. That sometimes, even though it's sedentary, if you want representation and you want me to look at it, go to joydisability.gov. No, I'm not the government. joydisability.com. Up in the left-hand corner is the free SSD evaluation. Fill it out. Mention that you spoke to me on here and give me this name, Maeve, and I'll call you directly. It won't have to go the regular route of review. Okay. Ms. Frantic says, I requested for him, I think you mean your attorney, to forward me the email. I don't know what email that is. Is he allowed to do that? And I'm pretty sure he said fully favorable. OTR has to be fully favorable unless you amended, as you alleged your onset date, Ms. Frantic. If you somewhere along the way amended your onset date, which we do, there's often good reason to do that, then it can still be a fully favorable based on the amended, but you would have had to amend that. And that judge would have wanted that on the record. It could be in writing, a letter, or, verbally. Yeah, I think you need to relax. I think you're doing great. I think that, that OTR is fabulous. They're really not that common, Ms. Frantic. So you really hit the lottery on that one, which you deserve. Everybody kind of deserves it. Okay. Elliot Franco, nice to see you. What's up, bud? Umo. If one is using mobility aids to get around, but still has difficulty with, say, a walker cane, how do you show, other than from the doctor's records, that there are issues? Well, you definitely want it in the doctor's records that there are issues. For sure. I mean, you discuss it with your doctor, and then hopefully that you have them, and hopefully he puts them in the record. You can also message him in the portal, because then it's generally part of the record, and make sure those messages get in when records are ordered. But yeah, honestly, through the doctor's record is the best way. And then when you're doing your function report, Umo, you're going to discuss that. There's a section about what aids you use. You're going to mark down everything you use. There's a little space there for, there's also a remark section. You could say, despite the walker cane, my legs give out on me, or whatever, whatever your thing is. So there are ways to get that explained, but the way that's going to be found kind of like medically established is through the doctor's records. But you don't want to not say it in your function report, because you want those two things to weave together ultimately in the end. So that you're saying it and the doctor's saying it. It's going to be a little difficult for, a judge to disregard it. He's going to have to really bend into a pretzel to do that. I mean, it would be like you'd have to have, you were on, I don't know, TV, water skiing, and the date was last week. So he might be like, I don't really believe him or her, or, you know, either one of those, the doctor or the claimant. You know what I mean? It would have to be something really major for him to be able to be like, I'm just not going to believe that her legs, his or her legs, you know, fall out of them. But you kind of want to have, you have to have all the medical in there about what's wrong with the legs, and that it's, you know, complained about, treated for, etc., etc. Okay. Treat, guys. I know I have an old video where I was like, treat. That's basically what you're doing. It's your priority job. I would say that's your full-time job now. I go, but not 40 hours a week. So when I say full-time, I don't really mean it that way. But I mean, it's a top priority, because otherwise you're wasting time with the claim, and your chances of denial go up a lot if you're not doing that. And then you're going to appeal and still be stuck in the same stressful situation. Umo again. Also, if one has insomnia disorder, what would be the best type of PF? Are you talking about pulmonary? Doc to be seeing for that purpose? PF. I see 3 docs for it as an example in my case. Insomnia. You see 3 doctors for insomnia? I mean, why don't you go to a sleep specialist? I don't know what more to say about that. I mean, if it's really bad, you're going to have all these symptoms, right? Like daytime somnolence, you know, you're falling asleep, practically talking to people, you know, depending on the severity. You know, it's a lot of these symptoms are going to be subjectively reported by you and not really evident. But if you have the sleep tests and get them updated and stuff about the insomnia, you know, that'll help. But it would be someone who specializes in sleep disorders. So I don't know why 3. Do you see 3 sleep disorder doctors? I mean, that seems a little overkill, but, and you probably have to have other impairments aside from insomnia for them to find you disabled. Like the likelihood of it being just on insomnia is probably slim. Elliot Franco, still in federal review. Went for CE last week. That's not federal review, Elliot. If you're in a CE, you're likely on initial. You got a 3368. That means you never submitted your medical contact information that would have been done in your application. So that's not about not giving a decision. They have none of your medical because you didn't give them the 3368. They don't know who your doctors are. Yeah, remember you have to provide all that. The CE, yeah. Oh, I don't know, because you say federal review. I think you mean that you're still working with the SSI, right? You have an SSD claim, Elliot. I don't know. If you have a lawyer or a non-attorney rep, that should be out. That should have been done when you filed online, because it's part of that process. But sometimes people miss it, and then they have to do that part by paper. Like if they submitted the first part of the application and not the continued part, their application is technically in, but not all the stuff that is needed to. And it's weird is they gave you a CE. They usually don't even do that unless they get the 3368. So I'm not sure what's going on with your case. Very strange. I got it. Like when you say you got a 3368, do you mean something else? 3373, Elliot? But you're pretty explicit here. 3368. That is the doctor information. And they get it in the beginning of the case. They get it before they send it to the medical workup office, which is the same office that looks at orders all the records and schedules you for that CE. So I'm not sure what's going on with your case there. Eric Weir. Hi, Eric. Thank you. Yeah, federal review, Elliot. I think your word is incorrect. Yeah. So I think you mean you have a Social Security disability claim filed, right? I think. Mary Moore. Hi, Mary. How many years in Georgia do they review your SSI again after approval? That would depend on your case, and it doesn't depend on Georgia because it's federal. But you have a diary date. Sometimes you can call. You should be able to call your field office and say, "What is my diary for my next CDR?" And that's CDR, Continuing Disability Review, Mary. And it's, sometimes it can be 1 year, 18 months, 2 years. For someone who's really expected to improve, they have a temporarily severe problem. And then more often it's 3, 5, 7 years. So you can call them and ask so that you're kind of in the know, because you want to keep your medical treatment records current. So you want to always still be going, so that when you have the CDR, they're going to ask for all the stuff you've been doing the last year or two. And you want that to be really robust relative to a CDR. So it's arguably a little bit less robust than you would need on your initial claim, because you've already proven you're disabled. Umo, you're welcome. Jackie Johnson. Yeah, nice to meet you too, Jackie. Thank you. Robert Camp. Hi, Robert. I logged into my Social Security account and it's showing I need to do a CDR. You should have gotten paperwork. I have not received anything in the mail yet. Should I inform my Social Security lawyer who represented me? He's probably not going to. He doesn't represent you anymore, because he could sign on and do another run with you, and that would entail all new paperwork and such. New 1696, new 1693. If he does CDR work, you should be getting paperwork, because sometimes it's time for a CDR and they do an internal review and they say, we decided we're not going to review it at this time. It could be the nature of your condition, which they don't have anything recent because they don't keep ordering records for you. They don't have a release from you. They're not doing that. It's only if they do a CDR, they say, hey, sign this so we can get your records, so we can see if you want to defend the CDR. Or they could send you the short form, which means they think you're probably not improved, but they want to just double check, and then it's pretty easy unless you've been working that you weren't doing before. Your doctor said you're good, fit as a fiddle, you can go back to work. That usually is like a non-issue. You do the short form, and then they're like, all right, we don't need to give you a full CDR. And then otherwise they give you the long form, which they could halt it after that, or they're going to go through the whole 9 yards. So I don't know which one it is for you. And again, it's got to come on paper. So sometimes the Social Security account online is very frustrating, because you guys get notices and you don't know, it's not very explanatory. Whereas even though the letters are not exactly well written, they at least, I always know what they mean, whether they're poorly written or not, because I'm familiar with what should be coming out. But these kind of cryptic messages on the SSA online things make it a little difficult. I wonder, Robert, did it say, we are going to be doing a CDR, expect some mail soon? Did it say anything like that? T-Cash, hi T-Cash again. Just to follow up on Ticket to Work, I should also mention I'll be 62 in a few weeks. Can I go back to SSA retirement? What do you mean back to it? You never were on it, correct? Because you can't get retirement unless you're 62. And Continue to Work was just approved 9 months ago. Is that a slippery slope? No, I don't think so. But stop talking about Ticket to Work. T-Cash, just go get your few hours, keep it well away from SGA. Ideally, safer, if one can afford it, is to stay under TWP. So stay under 1100, or make 1100, but, don't go above that. Sometimes that's not enough, but don't dance with the 1620 max gross amount per month. If you don't have to. because I just see too many people blow it, and they pick up an extra shift, and they don't realize how often they're doing it, and now they're over SGA, and they get CDR'd because of it, and or they get ceased because now they did it for 9 months and they were over SG. I'm sorry, yeah, they got out of their TWP if they even still had some, and they are mandatorily not disabled anymore. So, oh, Japanese font, Maeve's saying, with this really cool squiggle thing. I want me some of that. You know, I was in Japan once when I was 16 with the Rotary Club back in the 80s. I just came across a picture. Wait a minute. Oh my gosh. My mom relocated to my sister's in Minnesota this week. That's when I was doing that traveling for a couple. I found some pictures, and it was one. I'll have to get it. I think I'm in a kimono. I had a perm. I'll have to show you guys. It's pretty funny. All right, Bryant. Hello, my adjudicator wanted me to refill out my work history, saying he didn't know the job. Good, but missing some things. He also wants me to do a, okay, so yeah, you're going to go do a mental consultative examination, it sounds like, right? Oh, Brian, you got to do the work history further. It sounds like that could, are you over 50, Brian? Just wondering. That's where your work history is really, really critical. It affects the grid application, right? So be very careful on that one. Oh, my stage name is VW, like Volkswagen. Oh yeah, what was I saying? Like, this is my, I just say aloha because I happen to know VW. Wow. That's pretty cool. VW is in Hawaii, right? We spoke about it. Got up extra early to be here. I had to go look up the difference in time frame. I put a link up about how to find out your difference in time frame. VW, that's easy. In case I forget the aloha, because sometimes I start mixing up where people are from, I'll just go with VW. I won't forget that, I don't think. Maeve, too late, I stressed the form's deadline. Well, we do those on consultation, Maeve, but it's not super cheap. But get them done if you haven't gotten them done. Seriously. Maybe do a page every 2 hours since you're under a deadline. Yeah, Maeve, the sun kinders are loud. Jackie Johnson. My hubby has DDD. That would be degenerative disc disease. Usually that's what that stands for, guys. Severe cervical, lumbar, herniated, bulging disc, spinal stenosis, spondylolisthesis, which is different and worse than spondylosis, radiculopathy, paresthesia. Okay, that sounds like some pretty bad stuff. It's certainly something to work with, for sure. Valerie, yay! You can always ask a question, Valerie. Just pop it in. VG Warren, how long after your approval do you get your back pay first check? That's really kind of depends. They do some checks. SSI versus SSD is also an issue. They do some checks to see if you have certain federal debts or things that are otherwise required to be garnished off of SSDI back benefits, such as arrears in child support or legal arrears in child support or alimony even, or other federal debts. But usually that goes pretty fast. I will say the last few years, not so fast, but normally under normal circumstances. Valerie, let's get you in here. Does Social Security use investigators to follow people, either before collecting it and during? At times. Yep, if they have a reason to. Didn't I think I popped you up a, didn't you ask this someplace else and I popped you up if I didn't get it up there. Sometimes when I do a post, I know this happens to you guys too, it just disappears. I don't know why on YouTube. But they do. If you look up the CDIs, those investigations, yeah, during and after, if they have reason. They don't just do it. So that's not something they spend money on randomly. It's not like a CDR. Well, that's not random either. What would be random? The audits of the decision, not of you. Those things are random. The investigations, I believe, are when something kind of triggers them. There could be something that an SSA worker saw in something. It could be in medical record. It could be someone called in and said, I know this person's collecting, and I see her working 40 hours a week at the mom and pop grocery under the table, things like that. Okay. Okay, Valerie continues. I heard that in another video where Social Security uses an investigator to follow this gentleman around collecting. Yeah, like if they have a reason to, like I said, something happened. Something happened. They don't have a lot of money for this, so it's done, only when it's warranted. So that doesn't mean he's guilty of anything. There could be false reports, some vindictive person, or not, or he was doing something. I always tell my people, it's in my facts that nobody probably reads, but they should. Be careful with your social media. Everybody wants to look good and active and attractive and all this business. But, when you put up those pictures from the dance club and you have a bad back, probably not the smartest thing to do. And it could be that you were literally the one that didn't dance. You sat at the bar, whatever the case may be. Or, just talking about an amusement park and the fun rides. Like, you just don't know. I believe they would review anything that's publicly available. They're not going to walk into your house, but they're going to be smart about it. So just keep that in mind, guys. I always say to my people, get off social media altogether, either deactivate temporarily or just don't be so chatty. You can like people's stuff. You could say hi. Leave it at that. That's what private messaging's for, right? Umo, in regards to my mobility aids question I had, is it possible if I use secure messaging at the VA about the issues using the aids, would these messages go to from the doc help as well? Well, that's how I always suggest people do it if they can't rely on their doctor to report what they're telling them. Now, if you go into a portal, now I'm not speaking for the VA in particular, but an ALJ and I were talking about this. When they do a HITMER, which is their automated way of getting records from big health networks with whom they have such an arrangement with, and it's really good. It saves money, it saves time, and the records include, according to my ALJ friend here, they include all the messaging that went on through the portal with your doctor. When we get portal records otherwise, like from patient portal, those don't tend to be included. Now you can go into your messaging thing and separately print those out. And that's something I would do. It's a pain in the rear. And I can't believe they don't include them. I think it's inappropriate because anything you say to your doctor that is in your file is part of your medical history, that you reported this. So why isn't it included? I think it's inappropriate. I think it's wrong, but that's where we're at. And so this was in the context of a discussion with the ALJ about, she's like, always just ask me to do a HITMER before the hearings, and we'll do that. She goes, besides those portal records, and or when you ask for records from the doctor, sometimes they don't include the messages. So, I do know now we have to go in and separately look to see if the messages are in the portal download, which they're generally not going to be, and then go in and individually. It's almost like you have to screenshot them because they don't even give you a good, even like Epic My Chart doesn't give you I don't think, a nice way to print them, even individually, which of course, takes a lot of time. It's very monotonous administrative waste. But if you need your certain messages, maybe not all of them, but the ones that are pertinent, that's what we do. Because I want those in there. Because if 12 months ago you were complaining about severe pain being, every time you are on your feet more than 15 minutes and the burning in your feet or whatever, and the doctor's not really talking about it, and the judge can otherwise say, well, hasn't really complained about any problems with the feet, so I don't think the feet are, that's a mild, not, well, now he can't say that you haven't been complaining, because now the proof is in the pudding. So sometimes the mere complaints, they just show a history. But this didn't evolve today, now that you're complaining about it today in front of the judge. Judge, I've been talking to my doctor about it for 3 years. And, at least the fact that you're complaining about it is there, even if it's not something that doctor is treating you for. Uma with the insomnia. Okay, so the 3 docs are not sleep specialists per se. One's a PCP, good. And that referred you to the main specialist, which is a sleep specialist, I guess, and then a sleep study. All right, so that's good. I think you're doing perfectly fine there. That's gold standard, I would say, probably, for the treatment for that. And Umo adds that he or she also has PTSD, general anxiety disorder, and panic disorder, according to the VA. Thank you for your service. I think that means you're a veteran. Umo, thank you so much. I don't know your age, Umo, but if you have physical problems, and insomnia is physical, mental, we're not sure, right? Both, maybe. If you're not, I always say this, if your body is not like it was when you were 20, things are getting creaky as you get older. And if you're very young, this might not be something that you recognize. But those of us a little older do. Those things count. So if you have a less than 20-year-old acting back, knees, ankles, fingers, something's going on, degenerative or otherwise, and you can use that if you start treating for it and working it up for your case. And it's the thing that can very well be the thing that is the only thing that'll help you get over to the 100% disabled, because we can't win on 99% disabled, right? So if you're, all these things you mentioned here are get you way up there, and there's only like 10 occupations this person can do that exist in substantial numbers in the economy. Out of 12,000, you lose your case because there's 10 insubstantial numbers you could do. So we get a little nitpicky on that. I'm always like, go get everything, all the crumbs. We need the crumbs to build that cake to get to 100%. Elliot Franco, SSDI claim was in September 2024. Got held up because they thought fraudulent claim. Oh, went for federal review. You keep saying federal review. I don't even know what that means. If you're talking about they sent it to the DDS, which is a state agency that is outsourced to the feds by the states for the medical workup. That's the DDS, Disability Determination Services. Sometimes they call it Disability Determination Bureau. There's various names. Different states have different names, Elliot. So I think that's what you mean here. They're reviewing your federal case because it is a federal case. I think what would confuse people, and why I kept pointing it out, federal review is what most people, some people will say, oh, you're at the federal district court level. It's another appeal after we get denied at ALJ and the appeals council declines to review, and you want to take that particular application further. But I think I got what you're saying now. So you are still kind of where you should be. Had the CE appointment, but I don't know why you got that 3368. Maybe when they were doing all that, whatever was going on with you earlier, the fraudulent claim, maybe that interrupted the 3368, or maybe they lost it. Who knows? I've seen that, and I had to redo it for somebody. get them in what they want. It's a pain, but particularly if you submitted, when you did your SSDI claim, if you did it online, you would have had the thing where it says print your receipt. It gives you your answers. You're also shown the summary of your answers. You can print that separately and then like do the official receipt. I do both because I just get paranoid that one could get like destroyed file or something. You will see if you put all those medical people in there. I mean, it shouldn't, it's just funny that they're doing it now because they did send you up to DDS and you had a CE appointment, but someone doesn't have the 3368, which has all your doctors. So you could call your adjudicator and ask, do you have all the doctors from my application? Because that application, if they have the doctors, it means you did the online, assuming you did it online, Elliot, the online 3368 information, which I think is kind of the easiest way to do it. But sometimes people just miss that step. Application goes through without, or sometimes the SSA loses it or they have a glitch. That's when I've had to do the paper form 3368 sometimes for people, which by the way, was the way we used to do it all the time because we didn't have online in the beginning. So, but you know, they're not refusing to do a decision. They just have to do the medical workup. Otherwise they have to deny you. So you kind of want to give them their space to do that and keep informing them, Elliot. If you are pro se, of all your visits and keep going strongly. You know, you need to, the burden is on the claimant to show. So anyway, all right. And good luck with it, but get that done. If they say they need it, but again, you can call the adjudicator and say, what is this? You know, I did this. If they say, you know what, it got glitched out. Somehow they didn't have it. You know, that could be. Valerie, the last 2 CDRs I got were the short forms. Good. I haven't heard of receiving them since 2021. It was supposed to go until 2024. My payee filled them both out and asked me some questions. Okay, that's awesome. Short form, they didn't necessarily think that you improved. Probably the nature of the impairments and the lack of maybe evident medical technologies that could improve them. Sometimes if there's going to be medical developments, that's another reason, like, you know, someone could, they improve because they have new medical treatment that didn't exist before. Elliot did the same as Brian. I can't scroll up to see Brian, Elliot, because I will lose my spot. And I skipped over deep, was it CPAC? Was that your name? And then I had to go find him again. So I felt really bad. Mario. Hello, Mario. I received letter from SSA in 2015. If I became disabled, I could receive benefits. Okay. My DLI expired in 2021, September. I filed before my DLI. I received my VA benefits in 2020. I was denied SSDI, confused. Well, the SSDI found that you didn't meet the definition of disabled that is required for Social Security disability insurance benefits. Every insurance has its own definition of what level of disability triggers payments, right? Your DLI is 2021. You had to, by the way, have proven that you were disabled, as you know, before September of 2021. You didn't have to file before then. You just had to prove through medical evidence that existed before then that you were disabled before September 2021. I know you're thinking, I'm guessing you're thinking I received my VA benefits in 2020. So you had already proved you were disabled for the VA standard. The VA standard is much easier to prove. They don't require the same level of intense disability as SSDI. So that could be part of the issue there. But you appeal, right? You appeal, Mario. Just appeal. And make sure you know all the medical evidence that the adjudicator had prior to that denial, because there could be stuff missing. Do they have all of your veteran treatment records, your ratings records, your DBQs, things like that, right? Clara Ross, still at initial. Applied in January 2023. 3 DDS personnel now working on medical in total. Work history, function report, third-party report was sent December 24. Text is slow. Thanks, Joy. You're welcome. Yeah, that's a long time. That's now you're over 2 years. Yeah, I think this will be getting better sooner rather than later. But the 2 years, the years we've been dealing with this have been horrible. Yeah, so a little shakeup. Okay. Bryant says he plans to fill out the 3369. That's the work history report, guys, and have the lawyer go over to see if it is efficient. Not just efficient, if it says the things that are accurate that you want the SSA to know about. It's kind of a field in and of its own. Gotcha, Valerie. That's probably okay. She says she puts her animals on social media, but she rarely posts herself on social media. Yeah, I mean, we have pets. That doesn't, you know, I mean, if you're playing with like 3 big St. Bernards, that could be a different story if you have physical impairments, but, you know, you get my point. But generally, just pictures of your pets. Yes, Jackie, if you're approved for SSI and SDI, usually there are back benefits. Not always, but usually. So that's good. All right, what time are we at, guys? We got about 15 minutes left. Okay. Umo, thank you. You're very kind. Brian is 60. Yeah, get your lawyer to help. I know some of them don't, but I think the work history report being over 50, Brian, is critical that it's done right. It will sink or make your ship. Oh, Deep Seawick. Oh, I said CPAC, right? Sorry, Deep Seawick. Oh, thank you. That's very kind. It was my pleasure. This is the fun part of my week, guys. Truly. Umo, spinal stenosis, ulnar neuropathy, right hand, hurt twice in military, age 53. That's you, Umo? Mario, I was born with a disability and it got worse while serving. Plus the injuries I received during my service. Mario, thank you for your service. I gave them all my medical evidence. It's been 5 years. I'm 50, stopped working at 40. It's been 5 years since you applied and you're still on the same application, Mario? Oh, gosh. See, my brain's like a sieve. I'm trying to I'm scrolling up. Yeah, you're 50 now, Mario, but you had to also prove the standard at 46 because you said that your DLI is 2021 and you were probably 46. And that's a very, very high bar with SSDI. Everybody here knows it. You have that under 50 is extremely high threshold of disability. 50 to 54 is slightly less arduous. And then 55 and above and 60 and above there's more legal presumptions, about capacities to do certain things like adjust to other work that give us some great rules that help. But you don't have them at the age that you had to prove. And I'm guessing if you're a veteran and disabled with the VA, you're not going to be eligible for SSI welfare, which is a good thing because you have your VA benefits, thank goodness. And they're much higher than SSD usually. So I'm very glad you have those. Oh, quality review, Elliot. Federal quality review. Well, if it's federal quality review, then the decision has been made, yay or nay, generally. We just normally call that quality review. And they're looking to see if the decision was made pursuant to the rules that they had to follow. That doesn't say whether it was a win or a lose. You know, it could be either one. We definitely see it a lot when people are awarded, but I know it happens when people are sometimes denied. And I'm thinking, if that's the case, if you were denied, but you don't think you'd gotten a decision yet, or determination yet, sorry. So don't know. You have to have a determination before you can go through the quality review, but you might not have seen it, because a lot of times it'll be, it's like an audit, it's like that random audit, but it might not be a random audit if you complained about something, you know, I don't know, like maybe you were awarded and that's when they thought there was fraud. I don't know. But good luck one way or the other. All right, that's private conversation there. I saw their psychiatrist in February. Why more mental tests? Because they, like, I don't know why, but they think more detail is needed. Maybe your own psychiatrist is not very detailed, and they sent you to a general mental status exam, and it indicated there could be issues, and they need to see, do those issues mean you can only work an unskilled job? Like, are you reduced that much that skilled jobs you shouldn't be held to account for and only unskilled? Or is it so much that no jobs, you couldn't do the unskilled jobs due to certain lack of capacities that exist? And maybe those tests would tell that for them, you know? You had 5 x-rays in February and saw their doctor in February. My case still pending. Why? Well, if they could award you, they would. They'd love to get you off their plate. But apparently, as you know, we've been talking about this. We were just talking about this with Elliot. Things are pulled for audit. And if they missed something that they should have done that they didn't, and you had an award, like they were going to award you, now you're getting yanked. And now it's not. So they, you know, and they get a little black mark, right? So I think, generally speaking, they are going to want to make sure all those T's are crossed. I would like to think it's because it's looking favorable, Brian, but that would be speculation on my part. But they don't usually go the extra yard because they're trying to find a denial. It's usually because they want to get kind of like extra firm award evidence. That is my opinion. Maeve, is this the question? Did I ask you about, don't you have physical issues? Because you were only talking about the, I can't even find you now. I'm scrolling, trying to find our last communication. Because if that is so, oh, nope, sorry. Mixing up with someone else. But going to the 20-year-old, anything. Well, okay, think of a healthy, robust 20-year-old. And you've got a lot of physical stuff mentioned here, Maeve, including hypermobility spectrum disorder, cervical osteoarthritis in teens due to kyphosis, tendons damage, lumbosacral, sacroiliac injuries at 12. All right, those things are probably really, I don't know, I forget how old you said you were. Were you 61? The degeneration of things after we get hurt is often way worse than if, you know, we're all going to degenerate, but way worse if that structure has already been damaged. Yeah. So hopefully you want to get those records updated. So go get evaluated for those things if you've been just ignoring them. But it sounds like you're not, like you still treat for those things as an adult. Oh boy, where did I leave off, guys? Oh boy. Oh, there we go. Okay. Bren Ladie? Brenda D, am I saying that right? I'm on the last step on reconsideration for SSI. I did receive a letter stating they need to talk to me, but very vague about what. Well, did they say you were supposed to call them? Then you must. If you have an attorney or a non-attorney rep, hopefully they'll do it for you. I know with us, I don't have my people call them. I don't let them call a vague letter. I don't let them call at all. I do the calling. And I would say, I'll get you the information you need. That's my job. Yeah, because there's some loaded questions that I've seen people get asked in a way that would lead to an answer that would be unhelpful. And if they had been asked the right way, the full truth would have come out. So that's why I am here to prevent that. Okay. Valerie, you are welcome anytime. Thanks, Umo. Crystal Roberts. I don't know if we met before, Crystal. We might have. I have a mental status exam on Monday. Can you tell me what to expect? I can. There is a video. There's actually a two-parter you can go to. I think it's under the playlist, either consultative exams or mental. Well, it would be in the mental claims playlist too, but just look under the claims. It's like a two-parter, I believe, for the mental CE. So I would take a listen on that one. Jim McMillan, one last question. Anytime, Jim. Thank you very much, by the way. I have recent medical information. Should I send it directly to the ALJ or do I need to inform it? No. SSA, ALJ. That's who you're with now. The SSA is like a paper collector when you're applying and for things non-medical. They have nothing to do with the medical workup. So the ALJ's office in some of your paperwork, you should have a barcode with a fax number of where to fax. And you put the barcode page on the top of your evidence, and then you fax it to the number it says, and it will go right where it needs to go. And keep your fax confirmation. And then I would follow up, in a few days with the ALJ's office, and make sure they got it in there. You guys can't yet see, I don't believe, on your SSA online sites when you have a pending claim, what all evidence has been received. I'm hoping they change that. I hope they're fighting for that really hard because not so much that it would be helpful when you have an attorney, because then you might be bugging your attorney about things you don't need to be bugging them about. But for pro se's, when there's no attorney to be doing it for you, you kind of need to know what's in your file. So, yeah, that would be nice if they get that fixed. And I don't know if it's a fix. Maybe they're never going to do it, but I'm always kind of urging it because I just think if you're being your own lawyer, you should have access to all the same stuff as the lawyer or the non-attorney rep. Why not? It's your case. But you will be sending that to the ALJ and do it in the manner I just said, if possible. If you don't have that barcode or you don't know where it is, call the ALJ's office. You'll get a receptionist and say, listen, I have a case, pending for hearing, and I have evidence I need to submit, and I don't know how to do that. Like, I don't have a barcode. I heard I should have a barcode and a fax number, and they'll help you. They will definitely want that information. Bryant, you are a spry 60. And you do have a representative, so I think you got, you're doing okay there. Mario, I didn't get approved for my VA benefits 22 years later. I didn't, or I did. I worked enough to get SSR. They said I didn't have enough work credits. My disabilities meet SSI. Okay. So if you have enough to get SSR, that's not the same thing as having SSD. I just had a video on this about, your work credits and being insured for Social Security retirement. You're vested once you get it. Once you're there, you're vested. So that when you get a retirement age, you can collect it. SSDs differently because of the recency test. And that's where you have your issue is somewhat, Mario, because your DLI, which is that recency business, ended in 2021. So that's where all the evidence has to be before 2021. So when you appeal, if you appeal, that's when you want to make sure exactly what the rate, what they have in there. Okay. Okay, Bren Ladie. Oh, okay, yeah, you got that letter. Oh, they said they will call you. Did they give you a date and a time? And sometimes people have these appointments that they make, and I hear people say, I was there and they never called me. So you could try to call them, but if they say they're going to call you, I would just let them do that. Natalie Wolodzewski. Am I saying that right? My sister's name is Natalie. In the function report, if you are tube fed 24/7, should you put no's to meals for your? Yeah, that means you're not. Well, all right. This is going to be a weird question, but I say this because of a personal experience in my family. The person was tube fed after throat mouth surgery, and did learn how to make the liquid food herself. She has since passed, and yes, it was cancer. If you're preparing your own tube feeding, or the person is preparing their own tube feeding, they are preparing their own meals, but you would explain it, because if someone's tube feeding, I have a feeling their impairments, and I'm sure there are exceptions, but there's probably so much going on that that's not the only, so just be be honest. I do prepare my meals. I mean, like I said, I think she was able to tube feed herself for a spell there. And so she was preparing her own food to do that. So just say it. But my meals are all blended up, to liquefy to be tube fed. I mean, you're kind of getting a twofer there, because that's very compelling and visual for people. So anyway, I don't know if that's you, Natalie, that has to do that, or what have you. But if it's somebody else doing the tube feeding and preparing it, then it would be no for the person, right? Because they're not doing it. Mario, how really do they take into consideration on reconsideration? I've earned my 40 credits for SSR. They never told me how short I was on my earned credit income credits. Not sure also about my service credits. Service credits don't matter, whatever that is. If you're talking about VA, has no bearing. You're at the medical decision, discerning whether you're disabled in the time frame that you were insured. They're literally looking at the same evidence that their office mate down the hallway looked at. So if you have not updated them and given them more from the time period, they're going to have nothing different to look at, and you're probably going to get the same answer. If you need to find out if that evidence before 2021 had anything missing, whether it's VA records or outside the VA. It's not that unusual for stuff to be missing, so you need to find out exactly what's in there so you can go get it. I don't know who submitted your evidence for you. If you just had the SSA order it, do you know exactly what they ordered? I mean, they give you like a little vague descriptor in the initial denial letter. You obviously got because you're on reconsideration, but that doesn't really tell much. It says the name of the thing, and it says we received this report on so and so date, which that means we've seen the records, but they don't tell you which dated records. Some could be missing. Maybe they only got the last year when you've been going there for 10 years, some of which would have been before 2021. So you need to know exactly what they have. You can ask the SSA for a copy of your file. It's like pulling teeth. they are legally obligated to get it to you, and I believe expeditiously and at no cost. But someone on the phone often tells a false statement and says they can charge you $120, or they say it's not for program purposes. You're in the middle of a claim. Of course, it's for program purposes. They sometimes still want to charge you. Yeah, it's like, and there's a form, the 3288, I believe is the name of the form. You're going to want to fill that out and ask for the whole file. They're going to say on the form, it says you can't ask for the whole file. You have to be specific about what particular documents you want. But if you don't know what's in your file, how do you do that? And that's a big fat lie. I have a 3288 and I have attached to it the POMs that says I can't do that. So if you need that form, I just sent it to someone the other day, with that attachment, so you can demand your records and say, they still can balk because sometimes they don't follow the rules, but at least you have you know your rights. So I'd be happy to share that to you if you want to reach out to me privately. All right. Natalie, I think we already answered that question. Oh, Crystal Roberts. You're so funny. Crystal says, I'm a long-time lurker, but I never posted a question. Thank you. You are so welcome. Let's see. Oh, Natalie. I do my own tube feeds, but formula is sent in the case. All I do is pour formula. I would say, you know what? You could say no and explain exactly what you said there in the part that says, what do you prepare? Like, you could say no. You could put extra in there. I would do that. I don't prepare my food. Someone else has prepared it. You are partially, because you're then doing the second half. It's kind of like someone reheating soup that someone else made for them. I say that they are preparing their own food because they have that section about simple meals and stuff like that. Technically, you're doing a simple meal. So you could say yes, but, and then put that in there. That'll freak their world out. I would do it. Yeah, you could say yes. Yes, I prepare. Or yes and no. Click both, and then put in the explanation. It'll get their attention. Eric, am I too late today in asking for an overview of what to expect, considering I've just uploaded packet 4 to Joyce's Disability? Eric. You're not too late today, Eric, but that would be something private. Thank you very much. But it's good to see you, Eric. But as a general explanation for people, every case is different. But when we get our 4th packet, and if that's the last packet for that particular type of claim, and if it is the appropriate time to file the claim, to trigger the filing, and we have videos on when sometimes you want to wait, a certain amount of time, and for what reason, and what you want to be doing in that interim. But by and large, when we get packet number 4, the step then is ours, and our work begins. And we use all those packets, and we draft the application. And then once we get that done and out, then we use both sets of all those packets to start helping the person prepare their function report and their work history report. So that when that gets demanded, which sometimes is super, super fast, and then sometimes they're slow as an ox if you don't get the adjudicator on it, so that everything is all ready, so that whenever the SSA needs something, we are there, we have it done. The person at this point, in our situation, there's a message thread where a continuing thread in the portal in the message room where they continually put every new visit they have with certain basic information. There's like 4 pieces of information, Dr. Jones from so-and-so office on so-and-so date, that kind of thing. And so every time they go to a visit, their responsibility is to keep us informed that way. I would say just do it in real time. When you leave that and go home or wherever, or if maybe they're doing it on their phone. I don't really know. I'm not really good with the phone. So that they never forget about visits, because they're just always like, oh, I went to a visit, I'm going to shoot it over to my lawyer. And then we also have a form for them where if they have a new doctor that hasn't been included in the application, we want to get that information ASAP. So it comes to us, and then someone here puts it in a certain format, and we get it to the SSA so they know there's a new doctor and what the new protocol is. Sometimes just depending on the situation is what, but as long as this information is coming in and we know, well, this person's always going to be sending us this, everything is always up to date, so that when whoever is at that initial or reconsideration adjudication, they have all the information currently, who the new doctor is, who do they have to order, that kind of thing. So anyway, that's what goes on from there. It's really more of our work, and our brief is also getting started. And hopefully we don't ever have to use the brief, but we get it started from the get-go because it's like a work in progress. So it's always kind of drifting up to the mountain peak of when it would be submitted to a judge if we ever have to go to one. Hope that answers your question, Eric. Mario, I wouldn't know this answer. I have a feeling it's squat. I'm just saying. He asked, how much does SSA give you on your military extra credits? And it's not going to be a lot. I just remember, I know that it was something, I think, don't hold me to it, but I think it's kind of minuscule. I'm trying to figure out how they worked out the math. I did my claim myself. I started getting medical help since 2020, nothing before. And your DLI is 2021. You stopped working way before, apparently, and paying, Social Security taxes because your DLI was 2021. And if you had been firmly working, it would go on for another 5 years from the time you stopped working. So that tells me that you stopped working long ago. And if you weren't getting medical treatment during that time because you didn't think you were disabled at that time, and you were just not working because you weren't working, that kind of hurts you, unfortunately. But whatever you got between 2020 and 2021, Mario, is what they're relying on, because you're saying you didn't have any medical records before then. So you have that brief window of records starting in 2020, and that's all, you haven't given them a lot of, because remember they can't use the stuff after 2021 to prove you were disabled before 2021, generally speaking. So you really kind of curbed yourself in there. I don't know if that's the right word. Fenced yourself in. I forget your age, Mario, but you can get, and we have videos on this, reinsured for SSDI and push your DLI out into the future by regaining credits in the new years. You can only get 4 a year, and you probably need to get 20. Maybe not. Maybe you need 16 because 4 from whenever you last worked still are in the last 10 years of whatever date you're at. You might want to look at those earnings credits and getting them so that you can, and it's very part-time work. You only have to work like $8,000 a year to get all 4. So if you did that for no more than 5 calendar years, so you got 4 in 2025, 4 in 2026, 4 in 2027, 2029. By end of 2029, or even early 2029, if you made that 8,000 in the first quarter, you would be insured again. And if you did so, making just like the 8,000 over the course of the year, not all in 1 month, you would be under SGA all that time, and you can kind of show that you were disabled, or impaired, but you just didn't have the insured status. But there's ways of gaining it back. So it's just something to consider if you think you're able. M. Williams, good to see you. Long time no see. A week, maybe 2. I don't know. M. Williams says, what else is there possibly for them to order? Had physical, mental. So you had CEs, right? MW. Breathing and more x-rays. Have current x-rays and MRI along with breathing tests from primary care. Maybe nothing. Have they asked you for anything? MRI, you have the MRI, okay. If the MRI shows big bad things, that's helpful to your case, not for your body. But, we're talking about the case. Reborn doll mama. I guess we're going a little overtime, guys. If putting in a DAC app for someone whose parent recently retired, Is it best to talk to an attorney right away or try on own? Person is in 40s, no SGA history, autism and PTSD, finally diagnosed as adult. That's going to be a tough case because he's diagnosed as an adult and probably over 22. So how do you prove it was under 2022? It's going to be hard. You said no SGA history. Was there at least work of a non-SGA nature that gave that DAC person his own work history, in which case he doesn't have to prove he was disabled back to 22 to win, age 22 to win, but could prove it now? He might have insured status if he was working, say, $5,000 a year, you know, all this time doing very part-time accommodated work, that kind of thing. If not, he can get that if he's able to. You know, it could be he's working in subsidized work. It could be he's working fully accommodated as a severely disabled person. You know, that those credits still count if he's paying those Social Security taxes. So something to think about. I always think it's best to get an attorney, but you might have a hard time. You know, it might be a tough case for DAC. Anyway, maybe not so much for, well, you know, he's still under 50, so he's got that whole harder road to hoe, but Mario, I know it's confusing, and I wish I was 22. Well, I wish I was 20 in my body right now, but not in my life. I'm good where my life is now. But yeah, I know it's confusing. So just try to take it one day at a time. You know. Shirley Herring. And guys, I got to go soon because I think I have to take someone for a haircut. Unless hopefully he can go by himself. New driver. So Shirley says 55 with spinal stenosis and other things. Have attorney was recently denied by ALJ. Oh, will start new instead of appeals counsel. Is that wise? How will attorney be paid if new app is approved quickly? Well, are you using the same attorney or are you getting a new attorney? You can get a new attorney and the other attorney's out, just so you know, if that's what you want, because it's a new application. So the other attorney, unless you fill out a 1696 and keep him on board or put him on board, you're not connected to him with the new case. You could do pro se, or you could do a different attorney, or you can use the same attorney. If you don't think there's a strong appealable case, then there's no problem with filing anew. You're giving up what would be bigger benefits, but if you're going to lose anyway, and you know, they do give the ALJ a lot of deference. And you also have to look at your DLI, date last insured. When does it run out, Shirley? Because presumably you have one more bite of the apple at least, or else you wouldn't even be talking about it. If your DLI was before the ALJ's decision date, you would have no choice but to appeal to the appeals council because you couldn't file a no. So things to know, right? Anyway, yeah. So if you need me to look at it, I will. If you have the attorney though, and you signed on with one, then I would steer clear myself, of course. I don't want to interfere with that. If you haven't and you want another look-see, then let me know. But once you hook up with somebody, I don't interfere with that. Okay. Oh, so Reborn's talking about a 40-something-year-old disabled, not legally disabled, but impaired person who would be eligible for DAC if he or she can prove that he or she was disabled before the age of 22 under the rules. And she did clarify that the person has not worked SGA. Reborn, if you can get, and you could do this with the person, go to their SSA online account and download their earnings statement. And then you can see if that person is insured for disability, which would be great. Great. Because that means they could file for DAC. And if they don't win it, they can win on their own. Like they could file, both the the SSDI on their own work record and on the parent record as a DAC. On their own record, they don't have to prove back to 22. They have to prove only during their DLI period, okay, which is obviously got to be recent. Mario, I have my medical record since 1994, but never got treatment. So that's not helpful, Mario. I was working and just couldn't afford insurance and didn't have time to see a doctor. You're VA, though. So you can always go to the VA, right, Mario? Okay. Mario, it's my pleasure. I know I can't answer all the questions like intricately because I don't know your situation, but hopefully it's a little bit of input for you. All right. I think we're good, guys. I think we got through all the questions. That was a long one. That was like 2 hours and 20 minutes. Okay, not bad. I will hopefully catch you guys next week, Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 9 o'clock in the morning every day for the video share that comes out. All right. Out of our workday usually. Okay. I'll talk to you later. Thanks for coming, guys. I really appreciate it. Bye. Oh, and I should say, if you didn't catch it before, any of you, if you need me to look at or us to look at, evaluate your situation for possible representation, if you do not have a representative currently that you're signed on to with a 1696, sometimes if you have terminated one or really want to, I'll look at those just because it's not ideal, but we do. I mean, I get it. But you can go to joydisability.com, look in the upper left. I don't know my right for my left a lot. I have to think about it. And that's your free SSD evaluation. That's only for, getting looked at for representation on a claim you plan on doing or are currently in. Okay. And we have a team that, go through it. We're going to check to see if you fit into, we have categories, so we keep a balance. And if there's an opening, and often there is, for most categories, but not all. And if we spoke here and I suggested you do that, if I said it specifically to you, it's going to come right to me because Liz will see it and pop it right over to me. So it won't even go through that initial category thing. And we'll talk. You might get a review or we know right away we can't do it because there's no openings or it's waitlisted, and we'll let you know right away. But it doesn't hurt. It takes about 30 seconds. It's very short. Maybe 2 minutes. All right. Bye, guys. I'll talk to you later.